In my last video, we reviewed the planning and pacing graphs, which helps us understand how to pace ourselves appropriately so that we don't spike into the danger zone. Another helpful tool to guide us in this journey is the Activity Points Diet. Let's take a look. This is another resource I got from my optional placement at Parkwood Institute in London, Ontario, under the mentorship of Penny Welch West. The Activity Points Diet is based off of the Weight Watchers concept, which essentially is that you have a daily budget of cognitive points, and every task you do in a day costs a certain number of points. The points value is based on how difficult the task is, how much the task takes out of you, and how many symptoms you get. And the reason why it works is because pacing yourself can be an abstract concept. So having a way to quantify it with numbers is really helpful for people with brain injuries who struggle with abstract concepts and really need a concrete tool to help them recover. It provides a framework for limiting tasks and essentially boils it down to a formula where you can calculate, oh, I've already spent X number of points today. I can't afford to do XYZ task, or I need to take a longer break to recover to gather my strength for the upcoming task? Or can I postpone it or reschedule it? A good starting place for your estimate of what your daily budget is around 15 to 20 points. The way I like to start with my clients is go through what did you do last week on a day when you felt your best? Let's go through step by step. After we get that information, compared to how many points did they spend on a day where they felt like garbage and they needed several days to recover? We then know that the number from the good day and the number from the bad day, your true budget lies somewhere in the middle of that range. The reason why this framework is so helpful is because over time, as your stamina increases, tasks themselves will start to cost fewer points and your daily maximum budget will increase. So, say going grocery shopping currently costs you 4 points for a half hour of grocery shopping. 6 months from now, a half hour of grocery shopping may only cost you 2 points. On top of that, say your daily budget now is around 15 points. 6 months from now, how has that number changed? Do you now have 20 points to play with in a day? This handout makes the analogy that, like any diet, no cheating. You're only hurting yourself if you spike into the danger zone. It's only hindering your cognitive rehabilitation. So that's why it's important to stay within the budget points. But Jess, how do I know how many points each task cost? Don't worry, we have a sample chart. Here is an estimate of how much different activities cost relative to each other. That's not to say that everybody is going to have the same points value on this chart, but it's a good starting point. So let's go through it. This chart says that activities of daily living, like bathing, dressing, and grooming, costs anywhere between half a point to a point. If a person has things like shoulder injuries from motor vehicle collisions and they don't have the full range of motion or mobility, those bathing, dressing, and grooming tasks are going to be more difficult. So when you have those physical limitations, activities are probably going to cost more points. A simple breakfast is going to cost anywhere from a half a point to a point versus a complex supper costs between 2 to 3 points. Vacuuming, dusting, or any of those general cleaning activities costs about 1 point per task. Talking on the phone for 15 minutes can cost about half a point. Interestingly, though, talking on the phone for business can cost more than it does to just speak socially on the phone. Using the computer for 30 minutes is estimated to be about 2 points. That makes sense because the glow from the screen is hard on people with vision difficulties. Now look at this. Weddings, funerals, and baptisms are 3 to 5 points per piece. So if you're going to a wedding, the ceremony, the dinner, and reception are each going to cost you 3 to 5 points. So if your activity points budget for the day is 15 points and you attend a wedding and each part of the wedding costs you 5 points, you're done for the whole day. That has blown all of your points. And that doesn't account for the stress of getting ready, traveling, managing children. What happens if you're in the wedding party? Then the demands rise from there. A haircut costs about a point. I thought this was hilarious that watching a hockey game costs 5 points. I was just envisioning someone at home just losing their mind watching a hockey game. It took me an embarrassingly long amount of time before I realized, oh, they probably mean in a stadium where it's super overwhelming and overstimulating. That makes more sense. But look, grocery shopping or just shopping in general for an hour also costs 5 points. Isn't that crazy to think about? that just shopping, a task that so many of us take for granted every day, can be as overwhelming to a person with brain injury as going to a live hockey game. That really stuck with me. Having two friends over per hour can cost 3 points, and each additional friend costs an extra point. This is funny. So, attending physiotherapy, I don't know who made this chart, but they said it was 3 points. Attending occupational therapy, they suggested it was 2 points. Attending social work, they suggested it was 2 points. And attending SLP was about 2 points. Just speaking for myself, I can personally attest that my clients consistently say I cost definitely more than 2 points, at least 3 points, because I do try to tailor my sessions to challenge my clients, but in a supportive way. It makes sense if you think about back to my cognitive communication overview. Remember that when people speak too quickly, because clients' turtle brains can't keep up, some of that information is overflowing out of their funnel. It's not even getting in. And that results in people feeling exhausted and they just kind of have to tune out because they just can't keep up with the conversation. In my therapy sessions, I communicate to clients in a way that is accessible to them. I don't speak to every client in the same way. I monitor my vocabulary, the rate of speech, the complexity and intensity of the data I share based on where my client is at in their rehabilitation and the severity of their injury. What I'm trying to say is because I adapt the way I communicate, they are able to keep up. So instead of sprinting on a treadmill with a broken leg, I am getting them on a slight incline and getting them to go at a slow-ish pace, but there's an incline. So it's still working them hard and it is sustaining their attention that much longer because they're not tuning out when they're working with me. They are concentrating the whole time. They're actually able to keep up. So even though they're not sprinting on a treadmill, they're in it for the stamina. And after an hour of cognitive communication therapy with me, they are pretty much wiped for the rest of the day. So anyway, that was my long tirade about why I think I'm worth more than 2 points. Any therapy homework that clients have costs about 1 point for 30 minutes. Reading per hour can cost 1 to 2 points, depending on lots of things like your visual symptoms. Attending church service makes sense. There's lots of echo in churches, so the acoustics and all those bodies and even the close proximity of people can be really overwhelming. So that costs 5 points. We're not going to go through every single one. You can kind of read through yourself. But dining out with one guest is 4 points. Driving as a driver, short distance versus long, is 0.5 point to 2 points. Attending doctor's appointments can be 4 points. Large family gatherings, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, are 5 points for sure. There's yard work that costs more points. So again, to reiterate, these are just general guidelines for how much activity should cost. But ultimately, it's up to the clinician and the client to get a sense over time of how many points do activities of daily living cost me, because I don't really have any range of motion restrictions or any pain. Okay, so they only cost me 0.5 point, so that's fine. But I have memory and attention challenges, which makes it really difficult for me to cook a complex supper. So that's actually maybe 4 points instead of 3 points. So that's how you can use these values as a baseline, a good place to start, but you can tweak it according to your unique cognitive communication profile. So again, I use this tool with the planning and pacing graphs and I reinforce them pretty regularly. I don't make my clients write down or track their activity points every single day. If I were my own client, I wouldn't want to do that homework. But it is reasonable to ask them to track how many points did you spend on a day where you felt great at the end of the day, and how many points did you spend on a day where you felt like garbage and you didn't feel so hot the next day. Those two data points will give us information about where your budget truly lies. And it's nice to kind of review this not only at the beginning, so we get kind of a baseline of where we're starting, but then 6 months or even a year down the road, or maybe quarterly, up to you. If you feel that you are making progress or your clinician is noticing, hey, you're getting a lot more done in a day, let's see how many points you're at. It's a really nice way to quantify your recovery over time in a way that is really difficult to achieve otherwise. It's so nice to see a number value actually go up over time, even if it is just a subjective value. In later videos, I'm sure I'll go through functional examples of how I've used the planning and pacing graphs and the activity points diet as applied to a sample schedule, just to give you an example of what it looks like. But for now, I think we'll stop and good luck and go crush that therapy session.